All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Jesus for Mormons. I am Kai Van Leuven. I spent over 30 years in the Mormon church, and this is my story of what I did after leaving the church.
I'm Di Beals. I'm a pastor at Venture Church and your friend along for your story.
There we go. Perfect. Well, we're picking back up, and we are picking up in a part of the story that isn't necessarily chronological, but it gives just a perspective on a few topics that I think will help and I hope relate to a lot of people who are questioning leaving the church or have left the church. And so, and I hope kind of give some context. So the title of this podcast
I love your titles.
There's a little anti in all of us. And so this is based off of the Eminem. There's a little Slim Shady in all of us. And so this idea of anti, is that anti? That means anything that is negative.
Right.
Historically correct or not, that does not matter.
Right.
It's anything that is negative towards the church, that the church has not told you is okay.
Okay.
So the church can also tell you that negative things towards the church are okay.
Okay. Do they do that?
When called out enough.
Okay.
They do. Yeah. So they're not really one to like flaunt around, oh, well, Joseph Smith was this and this and this. But if it comes out enough, they'll be like, of course, he had, 30 plus wives. And
30?
You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, man, I'll have to send you some articles.
Processing.
In the summer of her 15th year. I'm sure many ex-Mormons will get that joke.
That's a lot of women.
Okay, I'll tell you this one.
Track of.
I said in the summer of her 15th year. So they, man, I wish I had the years on this, but they started producing these letters, where they did polygamy in Nauvoo. So they talked about Joseph Smith's polygamy, which is really messy, and I don't really want to get into the church history. There's so much, and there's people who have done a really good job. And so LDS discussions, I think you guys are great. And so anyways, so you can look at this, but Joseph Smith, they put out, so there's kind of the rumors that circulated. There's the CES letter. There's information that has come out. And then the church years later, even though they've had this information for almost 200 years now,
right?
They think it's important now to say, oh, of course Joseph Smith was a polygamist. And so there's a line in that talks about the range of ages for the girls and women that he married, girls being the key word there. And it says the youngest that he married was in the summer of her 15th year. She was 14 years old. But to lighten it, they said summer 15th. I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have been honest. But they were moderately honest.
Whoa.
Yeah, 14. Like 1-4. That's pretty darn young. Well, I guess there's a little anti right there. So anyways.
No comment.
So, so even if it's historically correct, it is still anti.
Yes.
And if I were to say that to someone else, I just anti'd with a D, anti, comma D, them. And so anything that is not positive towards the church is anti. Okay. And so I think that is a really interesting idea in light of what a Mormon missionary does, right? So a Mormon missionary, when I went out, I was part of the 1 millionth Mormon missionary.
Whoa.
So my group at the Missionary Training Center, the MTC, one of us was the 1 millionth missionary to go out. And this was in, 2007. And so it just shows you how many have gone out. So that was 17 years ago. They had 1 million. And one of the things that we would do is we would share the first lesson. Are you ready for this, Di?
I don't know. We'll see.
Di?
Teach me my first lesson.
don't become Mormon after I teach you this one. Okay.
I am probably already anti-Mormon, unfortunately.
Oh no. Okay. Well, we'll get to that. Okay.
Cue the Slim Shady music now.
Yeah, exactly. So, so in the first lesson we would teach, it was the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, this is a high budget production here, so we have these non-color coded photos, but the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So this was the first lesson we would teach.
And you bring a picture. You bring that picture.
No, we give a pamphlet. It's a half page.
Okay.
So it's
You've just blown it up for our purposes.
This is what I could get from a free PDF online.
Okay.
Okay. So, but it's like a half page, little pamphlet, little half page book, right? And I have literally taught this lesson, the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh, maybe 500 times.
Oh, wow.
Every single day we would teach it, maybe multiple times a day.
These are if people answer the door and invite you in.
Answer the door, invite me in. First lesson.
Okay.
This is what we're going to teach you. I bet you I had probably taught it 1,000 times. You're on a mission for, I hate to say this, 730 some odd days.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I probably taught this lesson 1,000 times and gave out the little pamphlet. Yeah, 1,000 times. So my mission was in St. Louis. We would hand these out. And I guess now I have this perspective that I wasn't going out and trying to build people's faith. I was actually trying to erode people's faith as I was doing this, because most of the people that we taught were Christian.
Yeah.
We were in the
You're
Bible
Belt. Yep.
We're in St. Louis but in Missouri and Illinois, right, in that general area. And we're out there teaching people about, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church. And so I think it's interesting, and this is why I believe that the message is an anti-message. It's an anti-whatever you believed before message. And so I hope that people who listen to that, maybe if you were a missionary, maybe that might rub you the wrong way initially. But I think it's interesting to think about. So the first thing that we would do is we would, everyone knows the title page of the Book of Mormon would be something we would read to people or have them read. And it would say, okay, and I would love your reaction about this.
No.
So Joseph Smith said about the Book of Mormon, I told the brethren, which would be like just anyone in the church or usually high-ranking people in the church, that the Book of Mormon was the most, I'll repeat it again, the most correct book of any book on earth and the keystone of our religion, and that a man would get nearer to God by abiding its precepts than any other book. Okay. So, Book of Mormon, Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Book of Mormon, Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What do you got?
I want to be respectful. So
Sure.
the chuckling here and there, I don't want to be disrespectful, because I realize you gave everything to this. However, the most perfect book, or however that was worded, is already
the most correct.
It's already, that's just a poor sentence construction. But I know enough from previous study that the earliest recorded writings of the Book of Mormon had quite a few grammatical errors, which is unfortunate for the most correct book. But
Sure.
But I think it's really unfortunate to put that above the Bible. Like, why is the Bible even in the conversation if it's more perfect than the Bible? Why do you even need the Bible? Those are my reactions.
Yeah.
That immediately makes me think the Bible is not correct.
Sure.
If we need a more correct book.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting. Anyways, I think it's about kind of undermining.
Yes.
Right. it's about, well, oh, if this is the most correct book, well, what do we say about other books? Right. What do we say about my other beliefs, right? It's kind of this passive aggressiveness, which I think exists in what I did as a missionary. I can't even say what those people, because it was me, right? I was the one doing this. All right.
And you're well prepared for the arguments that are going to be potentially returned to you.
Yeah, and I think, that's a really good point, Di, because what will happen is, you know that the Bible was canonized, right? And that it was people debating, right? Different.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have this right? This anti-Christian, anti-Bible idea that, these things weren't perfect. And that's why we have this. Like, that's why we have this perfect record, right? Which I think a little bit of study into it will see that it's not perfect, that's just a kind of sales pitchy way to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So this is actually a really, I'm even like embarrassed to bring this up in front of you because it is so cringy, but we're going to go for it. So oftentimes we would try to gauge someone's interest in baptism. Like, that's the big push for a missionary, right? Like, we got to baptize these people.
Okay, hold up.
Yes.
You just got invited into someone's house. You showed them a picture of a white Jesus holding a lamb with his hair tucked behind his ears.
Expensive visual.
You read that statement from Joseph Smith, and now you move to baptism? Is that...
Oh, I'm sorry.
What are we missing? What am I missing
What are we missing here? Okay. What we're missing is it's actually a lesson. So it starts off with, let's see if I can do this from memory. If I can't, you guys can blast me in the comments. God is our loving Heavenly Father. Okay. That's how it starts. He tells his gospel in every dispensation. So it's like prophets, like he has prophets that come and teach. There's a great apostasy. Then there's the restoration of the gospel. So it's kind of like leads into these topics.
So if the person is agreeable,
yeah. If they're like feeling it, like if they're like, yes, we love this, woohoo. But even not, like, my very first, so your mission is broken up into transfers. Okay. I don't want to get too technical, but my very first transfer, I was in with my trainer, which is somebody who, teaches you all the ropes, right?
It's your driver's ed instructor.
Yeah,
they can pump the brakes if they need to, but they're letting you take the wheel.
I'm not going to use the C word, but they do call them your father on the mission. That's your father. Okay. Is your trainer, like in a jokey way. Oh. But it's still kind of weird. Okay. Anyways, so me and my trainer are together, and there's somebody in the mission presidency who came and like talked to us about being new missionaries. And he says, the thing is what we're really trying to do is to get people to be baptized into the church. I think that's okay to say exactly what your intentions are. Yeah. And he said, and you kind of have to be fearless about asking people all the time, like not just beat around the bush about it. And so he's like, I want to challenge you guys to ask every single person you meet to be baptized. Like, we interact with like 50 people a day. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of people to ask. So I kind of became fearless with it because I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I mean, I believe that this guy's called and he's giving me some advice and I'm going to do it. So I asked a lot of people to be baptized. I baptized a lot of people on my mission. I asked a lot of people, but when we would gauge someone's interest and they were like, yeah, we want to be baptized. Or they would say, well, I don't need to be baptized. Like, I've already been baptized before, right? So that would come up all the time, right? Like an objection. Sure. And this is kind of where it gets a little bit sticky. We would say, well, I even cringe bringing this up, but because I think it's so disrespectful. But here we are, Di. You're across from me. We would say, well, let's talk about the authority that you were baptized with, right? So the authority. And then we would say this analogy. So if you were driving down the street and an ice cream man came and turned on his little siren and tried to pull you over for speeding, would you pull over?
No.
Okay. But if a police officer, you're driving down the street, they turn on their siren, would you pull over for that person?
Yes.
Okay. And what's
he has authority.
Yeah. The difference is authority, right? And so we would say, because of Joseph Smith, we have the authority to baptize people. Everyone else who baptizes, that's okay, that's a nice thing, but it's not done with authority, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, my feelings on that now are quite a bit different. But at the time, we're kind of, again, undermining.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like placing a little seed of doubt in there. Yeah.
Yeah, these people's experience that they've had. And some people, you're talking to people about spiritual things, and they'll tell you like just some amazing, crazy spiritual, experience that they had with God. And then you kind of like walk that back by undermining, well, that's a experience. I don't know if that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of walk that back. And so I think it kind of cuts down a lot of people's belief and faith in the experiences that they have had. So the other thing is then you kind of call into question whatever spiritual leader that they have at the time, what their authority is. Like,
right.
I don't know if this makes sense, Di.
Well, yeah. And what I can see forming in you, if I'm imagining this, is you are well trained to break down other authorities, believing that your authority that you are under is the only correct authority, which now has created an anti in you because you are anti everything that is not what you believe, which I think is true of lots of things, not even just religion. I mean, if I am a big believer in sugar is bad for you and I become anti-sugar, I'm, trying not to be a food judger all the time when I see someone, consuming too much sugar or what I think is too much sugar, or politics. If I'm on one side of the political spectrum, then I am anti what the other side believes. So I think it's part of a natural wiring of humans, unfortunately, but I can see you're setting yourself up for what else is there? This is the only way.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of this binary. Well, the church is true.
So everything else is not.
Everything else is like terrible and not. Or it's just kind of like, oh, like that's, we'll get into that in the next episode. But everything else is just kind of this other thing.
Yeah.
Other than truth. Other than.
Did you feel bad for the other beliefs and thinking?
No, I just thought they were wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I felt that empathetic or sympathetic. I just think I just was just like, oh, they're wrong. And what I have is true. And anything I can do to kind of break that down.
Yeah.
Like we would talk about the Bible and that it was translated so many times. So then it loses what Mormons would know as the plain and precious truths. That would be like a common quote. And so we would kind of diminish, the Bible in a way and diminish people's authority and Christianity as a whole. We would kind of cut it down at the knees and seed those put in those seeds of doubt.
And most of the people that you are talking to are probably not well equipped to handle the points you're bringing up, especially if they're loosely affiliated or loosely believe, I believe there's a God and I believe in Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, they're either not equipped at all, which I would say is like 95, 99%, or they know that what we're saying is maybe not the most correct. And then they want to argue with you.
They invite you in so that they can argue.
So they can go after it. Yeah. So they would call that we would call that a Bible bash.
Did you enjoy that?
I was in the middle on it.
Okay.
I mean, being a missionary is pretty lackluster. And so anything that kind of spices it up a little bit,
Okay.
I thought was kind of fun.
Uh,
Lackluster and awkward. And so if you can kind of have
Sure.
fun during the day, I don't know. I kind of had fun with it. So I think we look at this idea, kind of put out by the church that everyone who is not super positive towards them is like, they're kind of a victim of this. Oh, everyone's just persecuting us because we're true and all of these things. When I think that at the same time, missionaries plant seeds of doubt for people and aren't as building up of faith as I think the church wants to portray them to be. And I think I think it's just a little bit silly that it is like, oh, we're so beat up on, and then yet they have 50,000 people every day spreading this message that I think is anti-mainstream Christianity.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's kind of this, and then I think about what that does to people who leave the church and who have taught this lesson, like I said.
Yeah, 1,000 times.
1,000 times. I've taught this lesson and I know the objections. And so in my mind, I have undermined the Bible. I have undermined your authority.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And anyone who would preach in the name of Christ outside of the Mormon church. In my mind, I've undermined, oh, well, what they do at other churches, like people getting baptized and people getting saved, like that means nothing, right? I've already made those connections. And so, and been wired that way. And so I think that, I think throughout this podcast, I always want to answer the question, why are so many ex-Mormons anti-Christian, agnostic, and atheist?
Yeah.
Like why? I mean, ask people who have left the church, why are they anti-Christian, agnostic, and atheist? And they'll just be like, well, I don't know. It's just all not true. Okay. Well, like dig into that. Like, is there something, I mean, for me, it was wired into me for over 30 years.
Yeah.
Is there, does that affect it? Does that hardwiring affect it? Would be my question to someone. Anyways.
That feels like an absolute yes. It would be really hard to be so well versed in all the things that are wrong or not true about another belief system and then turn to that belief system. I mean, absolutely. That to me as an observer, that seems very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's good to know that.
Yeah.
Like going into a situation.
Yeah.
Like just to be aware of it, like that I'm coming in with a bias.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm coming in with, hey, I have all of these problems and I have all of these concerns about this religious system. I totally messed up on this, Di. We have to do this.
Okay.
We have to do this part.
Circle back around.
We're going to circle back around to the pamphlet.
Okay.
Remember, we paid good money for this. We're going to circle back to the pamphlet. And there is a certain part in this that I hope will, and this is if you're kind of a church history buff like I am, Mormon church history buff, because I like to learn about it, maybe because I have so much invested. But we're going to talk about Joseph Smith's history. So Joseph Smith's history is actually a book, Di. So if you look, Joseph Smith's history, you see that as the header on the top.
Yep.
So Joseph Smith's history. Hey, you guys, I brought my quad. Ooh.
Quad? Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, that's why it's so thick. Okay.
It's the quad.
Okay.
Which for those of you nevermos, I don't know. That would be the Holy Bible, the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price.
I just got it. Nevermo. I just got it.
Nevermo. That's actually a term. People use the nevermo.
I didn't. Yep. Okay.
You got to be on the Ex-Mormon subreddit. So anyways, in the Pearl of Great Price, which is one of the 4, Pearl of Great Price, which
I've heard of that.
Hey, there you go.
Yep.
So it is okay, so the Joseph Smith's history was taken from a 2,000-page history of the church.
Okay.
2,000 pages. Okay. Which I brought a book that's 2,000 pages.
Okay.
This is 2,000 pages, friends. 2,000 pages condensed to 14 pages.
Whoa. Okay.
Okay. So think about that. Like 2,000
That'd be hard to sum up in 14 pages.
to 14 pages.
Okay.
Okay. So in these 14 pages in Joseph Smith's history, a lot of us are familiar with Joseph Smith's first vision. So that would be what I could almost quote verbatim the video that we used to show people. In the spring of 1820, a young man looking for answers went into a quiet grove of trees. Anyways, that's how it starts. And after he has this first vision in 1820-ish, for those of you who know about all 3 accounts of Joseph Smith's first vision, in the spring of 1820-ish, as we come to later find out in church history, Joseph Smith has this first vision, and he says his object. So the reason why I'm gonna say this in non-King James so that you can actually understand it.
Okay.
I've read the Bible so many times in King James, and I don't think I ever really grasped it until I didn't read it in King James. So I'm going to try to kind of paraphrase this. So this is in Joseph Smith's History 1:18, for those of you following along at home. My object, or the reason in going to ask of the Lord, was to know which one of the sects or churches, SECTS, don't want to get canceled, was right, and which one I should join. Okay. And so then he says that this personage, which he believes is God the Father and Jesus Christ, said to him, I was answered, so this is in verse 19, I was answered that I must join none of them, for they were all wrong. And the personage who addressed me, this person, said that all their creeds or beliefs were an abomination.
I've read this before.
Okay.
I'm with you.
They were abomination in his sight, and that those professors were all corrupt.
I wasn't alive then, so I'm not corrupt.
You're not? Okay, good. They draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They teach for the doctrines and the beliefs and commandments of men, having a form of godliness, lowercase g, but they deny the power thereof. All right.
Pulling some stuff from the Bible there.
Yeah, why not? If you can use it, right? So what I didn't show you in my high graphic is that on page 11 of that little pamphlet, on page 11, they actually quote this verse. So that they were all wrong. So if you see right here, they were all wrong. They draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They took out the portion of them all being an abomination. Okay. But if you grew up in the church, I mean, I could almost quote all of Joseph Smith's history up until like verses 1 through 20. I mean, I know you hear these things over and over and over and over again. So you know that, like,
you know the abomination's in there. It's just not in print in your face.
Yeah. I mean, but you know it's there.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to bring that up. It said that all of their creeds, so a creed would be like a teaching inside a church.
Yep.
Were an abomination in the sight of God, and that their professors were all corrupt. and pretty much they're doing it for the wrong intentions. If I'm summarizing the backside of this, that they have a form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. So I kind of I think that kind of it kind of sends home this idea that there is an us versus them mentality.
Yeah, it's a strong message when you walk into someone's house right there.
Yeah. And I mean, it's passive aggressive. I think, you can't really go that hard. You do this every day. But I do think that you, at least as a missionary, have this in your brain. And you believe, like I believed when I first walked in here, that, see that guy up there on the stage?
He's an abomination.
This church is an abomination to God, and he is corrupt, and he has intentions that have nothing to do with God, right? And so I think that that's an important thing to think about as you walk. Maybe you'll never walk through the door, but as you're thinking of somebody going to a Christian church with this wiring that a Mormon missionary or someone within the church has.
Yeah.
So anyways, Di, what are your thoughts on this as we kind of look at this and kind of wrap it up?
I mean, you said passive aggressive. That feels like fighting words to me. So it feels less passive and more just aggressive. And it feels, if you're getting my honest reaction, it feels well played. If I'm trying to create a belief system that's going to keep my missionaries engaged, they would have to believe that the world is fighting against them and they're preserving the only truth left. And they would have to go prepared to fight for that and argue that in order for our belief system to continue to be sustained. I think my other reaction is how unprepared most people would be to be confronted with these words and not know what to say or what to do with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's something that is important to emphasize when you think about what the mission is. The mission is about going out and converting people, but it's also about converting the missionary.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a huge purpose in it, is
cementing everything inside of them.
Yeah. These are the future leaders of the Mormon church, are these people. And so
it's brilliant, actually.
Yeah. However you can, I don't want to use the term indoctrinate, but teach maybe, or
you're refining them. You're cementing the belief system in them, because the more people have questions or even argue with them, the more you're going to plant your flag on your beliefs.
Yeah. Double down, triple down every day, right? That you have conflict.
Even if you have questions, you would never, I would imagine, break. You wouldn't break face or character in front of somebody. You would instead resolve even stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that's an important thing. Like when I think about my message and who it's to people who have gone on missions. And to think about, like, if they're wired anything like me, maybe they aren't, but I would like to think that a lot of us have had a lot of similar experiences. And why did I feel so negatively towards coming in here? Why did I feel like it was like, not of God and just this show?
Yeah.
Right? Why is it that I had those feelings?
Because you were indoctrinated to have those feelings.
Yeah. I think that if a lot of people who leave the church will say, yes, I was indoctrinated, right? Like, yes, my beliefs were totally put out in front of me. But then at the same time, I don't know if they question all of the negative effects.
Right.
I'm saying all, right? They question some of the negative effects. Hey, I gave 2 years of my life. I gave tithing. I gave this. But I don't think they look at all of them.
But was I misled in my belief system or my beliefs about God?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a question. I would throw that out to people. So anyways, I think we had a good discussion here. I think there's a little anti in all of us. I think there's a little bit of when people get off the mission. I think there's a little bit in at least in me. I can speak for myself in what I experienced. And I think we had a good discussion.
Quick question.
Yes.
Have you ever had Mormon missionaries come to your door?
After leaving the church?
Uh-huh.
I haven't.
Would you invite them in?
I would, and I would say, hey, I don't really want to hear what you have to say, but I will give you food. I'll talk to you about your hometown. I would have those types of discussions, but I don't.
You don't want to have the Bible bash?
No, I've never felt that that's my role. And maybe if I really felt that role, if I felt like, hey, this person needs to hear, I would do it. But I think it's pretty hard being on a mission. And I think that I would just have compassion. Mm-hmm. And I remember every time people were rude to us on the mission, I don't think it really had the response they wanted. It just kind of spiced up my day, or it didn't really make me feel like you're dealing with crap every single day. Mm-hmm. Like you're dealing with like people that don't want to be around you almost all the time. And I would just kind of want to be I hate using this term, but like a safe space or a safe area for people to go. If they wanted to talk, if they just wanted to say
kind.
Yeah. Kind. They said, hey, I'm from San Diego. I'd say, well, are you Padres fan, right? Talk to them about whatever, talk to them about what they have going on in life, and just be kind to them, but not try to preach to them. I don't feel that that's my role right now.
Yeah.
I would hope that they would listen to this podcast though. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you want to reach out to us, JesusForMormons@gmail.com. You can do that. And we would love to hear your questions. I will take your questions. I'll take your questions, and we can kind of have fun with that. Until next time.
Until next time.